Hey everyone, it's Megan from Bookish Delights, and this video is going to be my recent reads. This is for the month of May, June, July, and then August as well. So I'm going to try to do these in the month that I read these books. A lot of these are ebooks, or I just no longer have the physical books themselves, so I will pop up a photo right here for the ebooks and other books that I don't have anymore, because I did unhaul a few. I'm not going to spend too much time on descriptions of the books. Some of them I might, depends, because there are quite a few books since this is for the last several months. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So the first book was Zenith by Lindsay Cummings and Sasha Ellsberg, and if you watched my recent video, which was my unhaul, and you know that I have unhauled that book recently, and I have decided not to continue on with the Andromeda saga, which I do believe there is a second book already out, and there might be a third book in the works. I'm not quite sure about that, but it follows along a band of friends, and that's about all I can honestly remember. It's a sci-fi book. The cover is beautiful. It's galaxy. I love galaxy. It's purple, my favorite color, and I honestly can't remember anything about the book really, because it's just not my thing. I wasn't really going into the book with high expectations anyways, but I want to support a fellow booktuber, and I will be wanting to pick up both Sasha's and Lindsay's work in the future, but just not this series. Moving on, we have Hidden. This is by Helen Frost, and this is written in prose. It was a nice little read, nice and short. It deals with the main character. I think her name is Ren. Either Ren or Dara. One of them gets kidnapped when she was younger and managed to escape after several days, and then the other character, Ren or Dara, I can't remember which one was which, they're around the same age, and it was one of the characters' father that had kidnapped the little girl without his knowing, because he was just trying to steal the vehicle and didn't know that the little girl was in the back seat hiding. That being said, years later, the two girls meet up at a summer camp and kind of deal with that, or try to hide that from everyone, that they knew each other, and just try to make a fresh start. So it is a nice little read. Next we have A Summer of Stars by Lisa Y. Watson, and this, if I can remember correctly, the main character, I'm going to say her name is McKinley Graham, I think is her name, and she has decided to take a little mini vacation for herself to deal with her health and to de-stress from her work life, because she has become a workaholic and she wants to leave that behind for a little bit and just focus on herself and maintaining her health. So she didn't expect to really meet anyone while on vacation to this little town. I can't remember where the little town was located, but she ends up meeting this guy, Zane, who he has been through a bitter divorce and left that part of his life behind and all his finances, and just moved home to help his father with, I think it's a construction company his father owns. And then they quickly become friends, and the relationship develops, and then they become a couple. And then lastly for May, I read The Elite by Kira Cass, and that is the second book to the Selection series, and the Selection just follows along like a group of girls enter this competition to become the next queen. I can't remember where the selection takes place, but it's a very good book. It's one of like my top books series that I'm reading. I love it. I've read the first two and I'm anxiously waiting to start the third. It's just I have so many books on my TBR that I need to get through first. So sadly, some of my favorite books kind of get pushed back because I'm trying to finish other series. So moving on to books for June, the first one I read was Harry Potter and the Order of Phoenix by J.K. Rowling, and I believe that is book number 5, so I'm almost done the Harry Potter series. I haven't read anything further yet. I've been listening to the series on Libby. So again, this just follows Harry Potter's life at Hogwarts and all of the events and things that he gets himself into. Next, I have a poetry book, and this is Empty Bottles Full of Stories. This is by Robert M. Drake and R.H. Sin. So it is a collection of poetry by 2 poets, and it deals with like heartbreak, loss, being lost, and just poetry of that sort. And there are some poems that I really liked. In this, the cover is beautiful. It's simple. I like simplicity covers for poetry for some reason. It's very nice. Yeah, some poems I really enjoyed. I even highlighted a few passages in here that I liked, but a lot of the poetry, it didn't really connect with me per se, but it might connect with you guys. It's really nice. I liked it. And the next one I read was A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee, I think is the author. I listened to this on Scribd, I do believe. If not, it was Libby. Those are the 2 places where I get my audiobooks from. And this is basically about the main character, Henry Meetcute. He goes by Monty, and he embarks on an adventure in Europe, a tour of Europe, and his best friend Percy and his sister, which I can't remember her name, they tag along with him, and he's kind of more on the wild side. He doesn't want to abide by his father's rules, but after this final tour in Europe, he has to settle down and become the adult that his father wants him to be and work with him and deal with his business. But that being said, Monty has fallen in love with his best friend, so it kind of follows along with him dealing with that and trying to keep it a secret so their relationship or their friendship doesn't get ruined. It was a really good read. I quite enjoyed it, and I will be continuing on with this series once I finish other series. And then we have The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert, and I just love this cover. I just love gold and silver on like a nice matte black. So this cover it sings to my heart. There's another edition where it's like a matte forest green with the gold and silver. That also looks really nice, but I think that the black makes the gold and silver foiling stand out a little bit more. This was, it was an okay read. It wasn't my favorite, but I didn't hate it, but I also didn't love it. And I think I will be continuing on with this series. I don't know what the second book is called, but I do know that there is another book somewhere. The last book for June was Wish by Jake Smith. This deals with a cancer patient, but it's in the perspective of the father. And the father was really big into baseball, and his only dream is to be able to play catch with his son. But it's very hard because, like I said, the son has cancer, so he doesn't really have the energy to be able to do the things that he wants to. But the one wish that the son was granted after meeting one of the Major League Baseball players, which I can't remember the baseball player's name, but the one wish that the son wanted was for his father to play at least one game in the majors. So his father ends up having to go through the training and the different levels of getting to the majors. It is heartbreaking, but it's also really nice, and I like that it was in a different perspective than the cancer patient. I would totally recommend this book, and I made my mom read it, and she really liked it. Moving on to July, the first book we have is Fixer Up by Tessa Bailey. This was a slow burn romance book, but when it got to the romance, it really hit the romance. So this is, I think it was another baseball player. He had injured his shoulder, I believe it was, and then he couldn't really get back into the groove of playing baseball, so he ended up being dropped from his team. Then he moved back home to his hometown. Is kind of trying to lay low, but he's also becoming like a slob. So his best friend's sister comes by to try and help him get out of the funk. While doing that, the baseball player helps his best friend in construction and ends up helping renovate the sister's house that she has, and in doing so they end up falling in love, and there's some steamy scenes in here, and I really liked it, and I can't wait to read the next one or more work by Tessa Bailey. I really liked her writing. The second book for July was Julie and Julia by Julie, I can't remember her last name, Julie Powell. I kind of did not like this book. This deals with Julie embarked on this mission. She started up a blog and she wanted to create, like, go through this like recipe book in like a year and document it, and then it got turned into a book, got turned into a movie. It's just the writing style of it. I don't know, I found that it was just too long. Some parts could have been left out. Some parts were okay. It was good. I don't know, it just didn't call to me. It's like I didn't really enjoy the movie all that much either. Like, I watched the movie after reading the book, and I skipped a lot of the movie. Not gonna lie, I did skip forward in it. So the next book I read was Sweet Bitter by Stephanie Danler. This was an audiobook I listened to, and it's basically a coming of age story, and it takes place in New York City, specifically Manhattan, in the Manhattan restaurant. Tess is the main character, and she lands a job as a back waiter, I think it was, in this restaurant, and it deals with her fast-paced life in New York City, and it deals with love, lust, heartbreak. There's some drugs involved, and it just unfolds like that, and just how she's dealing with this style of life. The writing was really nice. It kept me entertained, and I do believe, I can't remember if it's a TV show or a movie, but there is I think it's a Netflix original dealing with this book, so I will be giving that a watch at some point in the future. The next book I also unhauled this book, and that is Mask of Shadows by Lindsay Miller. This is the first book in the series. Don't know anything about after the series. I'm not going to continue on with it. The concept of it was kind of okay. I honestly couldn't tell you much about the book because I don't really remember it. I just remember when I finished it, I was confused at how it ended, and also I started reading the physical copy but had to switch over to the audiobook to get through it. And honestly, if I weren't taking part in a monthly book competition, book battle over on Facebook, I probably would have DNF'd this book, but because it fit criteria and it awarded my team points, I kept reading it, and I honestly can't remember anything about it. I do know that the character is gender fluid, so it is an LGBT plus book, character representation in there, and that's about all I can remember. Moving on to the last two books for July, I read Love and Gelato and also Love and Luck by Jenna Evans Welch. These two books are very cute, and I recommend them. As soon as I listened to the first book, I went straight to Scribd to find the second book, and I just started it right away, and I love it. The two books, they are two separate main characters, but they are best friends, so these stories interlock with each other. And the first one, honestly, I won't be able to tell you which one's which because I read them so close together that I don't know what happened in each book. But I loved the story. I loved it. It was really cute. It was more of like a coming of age story. The first one, I believe, dealt with, can't remember the characters' names right now. I'm bad with remembering names. But the first book, the main character, her mother passed away. I think it was cancer she had. Her mother was sick and she passed away, and then she went to go live with her father in Italy, and is just trying to uncover stories about her mother's past and get to know her father more. And there is some secrecy in there, and she has her mother's journal, and she's trying to uncover who her mother's lover was so she can figure out who her father is and more about him. And it's really cute, and she meets up with this guy who is helping her along this journey, and they end up falling in love and dating as well. The next book, Love and Luck, is about her best friend. This is her best friend's story, and they take a vacation over in Ireland, the main character and her family, and then somehow her mother lets the main character and her brother go off on their own for something. I can't quite remember all of the details, but they go on their own journey. However, they take a turn and go on a separate journey that their mother don't know about, and they have to try and keep a secret. And it's kind of just a coming of age for them as well, and just trying to figure out what they want, and they're figuring more about themselves and each other. And it's a really great read. It's really nice, and I recommend it to anyone. And I probably confuse people by those descriptions. I'm sorry. And finally, moving on to the month of August. August is not over yet, but at the end of August is usually when I hit my end of the month reading slump. So my reading has slowed down a little bit, but let's just get right into it. The first book is Fat Vampire, a never coming of age story by Adam Rex. Started off good, but it kind of went quickly downhill after that. And basically this teenager, I don't know how old he is. He's kind of 14 maybe. So he gets turned into a vampire, and he's just trying to figure that out. His best friend, I do believe his best friend does know that he's a vampire. So he's trying to live life like that and keep it under wraps. But then he ends up falling in love with a girl who does not love him back. That's about all I can remember. Like I said, it started off strong, but then it went downhill. Moving on, we have 11 Birthdays by Wendy Mass, and this was a cute little read. It is about how, I think it was two best friends. They share the same birthday, and they celebrate their birthdays each year together. But one year, when I think it was when they turned 10, the male best friend, I can't remember their names, like I said, I'm bad with remembering names. The male best friend said something to like his guy friends to try and fit in. He said something horrible about the female best friend, and since then they got in an argument and they stopped talking, so they grew apart. And then when they wake up for the 11th birthday, they're not celebrating together, and because of that, they end up going into a loop of every day they wake up, it is their 11th birthday, and they have to try to figure out why they're in a loop and how to break it. And eventually they come back together and form and become best friends again, and they work through what happened in the past. And it was a nice little read. I liked it. The next book, this is like one of those 100-page cringy romance books that you can find on Scribd. I've been starting to read these type books in between other books when I'm not sure what I want to pick up, when I just want to like cleanse the palate, I guess you could say. So this isn't an alien book. I have read some other alien cringy romance books this month. But this one it's called Angel of Europa. I stumble over that word. I don't know how to pronounce it, so moving on. And that is by Alan M. Steele, and basically I think they're in space, something like that, and there was this horrible accident, but the main character, I don't know his name, again, sorry, the main character, after he has been like healing and in a coma, he was in a medically induced coma for quite some time so he could heal, but something has happened in the it's not a spaceship, I don't know what they're on, it's some type of spaceship, but it's like kind of like a big colony type thing. So something has happened there was an accident while 3 other characters were exploring this new area, and 2 of the people died and only 1 survived, and they're trying to figure out what actually happened, if it was an accident, if it was murder. And the main character, you can say he's kind of like the investigator on the spacecraft colony thing. So he gets woken up from his medically induced coma because he is healthy enough to be able to start to investigate and start to get back up on his feet. And there is some secrecy, there is some lies, and then in the end the investigator, he finds out the truth, and sadly 2 lives were lost. The next we have Birthday by Meredith Russo. This is another coming of age thing, and it's about 2 best friends, Morgan and Eric. They share a birthday. Again, they were born on the same day, and I think they were born at the same time. So they're linked in that way, and they quickly become best friends because their parents had decided to always celebrate their birthdays together growing up. And this has a transgender representation with the character Morgan. She was born male but realizes that she wants to be female. So within the story, it kind of follows along her journey into becoming her true self and accepting her true self and trying to come out to her close friends and relatives. In the story, the Morgan and Eric do drift apart as the years go by, because I think each chapter, or like every so many chapters, it's like a new year in their life, so it follows along them growing up. So they do grow apart because they're trying to find about who they are themselves, trying to figure out who they are, but then they do come back together, and ultimately they do end up together. So the last physical book I have is Die For You, and this is by Amy Fellner Domney, and this cover is beautiful, it's stunning. I don't know why, I don't normally typically like people on the cover, but this one, I don't know, I just really like this one. This book, I liked it to a degree, but I feel like there should have been some type of trigger warning at the start of this book, because there are some places in this book where it just really goes in deep, and like just like you really weren't expecting that to be in this story. But basically the main character, Emma, her parents have split up, so she ends up moving in with her dad to a new town and making friends there and trying to figure out how she can forgive her mother, if she will ever forgive her mother, while trying to keep her dad from going on a downward spiral and drinking so much. But then she meets this boy, they fall in love, and they have their future mapped out together. But then she gets an opportunity to study abroad because she wants to be an archaeologist just like her dad, and I think it's in Rome that she gets a chance to study abroad. But her boyfriend Dylan does not like the idea of them being separate, so he starts going on his own downward spiral, and there's a lot of shit that just happens. If you're gonna pick up this book, there is trigger warnings, there is I actually wrote them here. So there are mentions of self-harm. There's controlling boyfriends, if that is a trigger for you. There is mentions of non-consensual sex, so rape, but it doesn't go into detail. It just says that she said no, or she wanted to say no, but it happened anyways. Then there's mentions of suicide, and then also there is an attempted suicide. So those are the trigger warnings. So just be careful if you are picking up this book. It is still a nice read. Emma is trying to figure out how to help Dylan, how to get him some help without making him angry about it. It's a good read. Just be mindful that there are mentions of things in here. And then we have Meetcute by various authors. This is, I think the subtitle is something like Some People Are Just Destined to Meet. So this follows along multiple people. So each section is different lives and different stories, and it's just documenting how some people are just destined to meet. The last book that I read was Wearing the Cape, The Beginning by Marion G. Herman. So this is a mediocre story. It's your basic superhero versus supervillain story. There's this girl who, after gets in this accident, her superhero powers awaken, and it's just basically how she got her start of becoming a superhero. And lastly, before I end this video, I want to say I am continuing reading A Court of Thorns and Roses, or I'm somewhere in here. I'm about 20% into it. This was my TBR jar pick for this month. So I've been reading it slowly throughout the month. It's a really nice story. I like it so far. It's not my favorite, but I have to remember this is the first book in the series, so there's a lot of world building and all that needs to happen. So I'm hoping the books in the future of this series get better, and I'm sure they will. Oh, this is by Sarah J. Maas, if you did not know. That is all of my recent reads for the month. I hope you guys like this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit that bell icon to receive any notifications for any videos that I post in the future. If you have any video suggestions for the future, leave them in the comments below. Or if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And I will see you next time.